Welcome to the Bean Pod. In this episode, we focus on the UCAT test. With so many resources out there, it can get confusing. So we've brought together one teacher and two students to get their advice on successfully navigating the UCAT. I hope you find this useful. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Bean Pod. In this episode, we're going to talk about the UCAT exam. So today I am joined by Stephanie Davis from KTJ. Hello, Stephanie.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Davis. I'm the Senior Deputy Head at KTJ International School. I've been now supporting MABECS at KTJ for a number of years, and it's one of my favourite roles at KTJ.
Fantastic, thank you. We also have two of Stephanie's students from this year. So we have Brandon Lee. Hi, Brandon.
Hi, my name is Brandon. I'm currently a year 13 student studying KTJ, and I've applied to UK and Hong Kong for medicine.
Oh, okay. And you did the UCAT this year?
Yes,
a few months
correct.
ago. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. And Preena Selvam. Hey, thanks for joining us, Preena.
Hi, so I'm Preena. I'm also a year 13 student at KDJ, and I also did the UCAT recently. I've only applied to UK universities for medicine.
Okay, fantastic. And you've both been through some interviews as well, right?
Yes.
Okay, maybe that's a chance for another episode, a different time. All right. So in this one, we really just want to kind of get down to how you guys recommend other people should prepare for the UCAT exam. So the first thing I think really we should say is that you should just be going to the official site for the latest information and for booking, which is UCAT, so ucat.ac.uk. And they've got lots of guides and advice as well. So there's lots of information there, pretty much needed for all of the UK universities for medicine and dentistry. So really, really important. It's hard to avoid. Very strict deadlines, like all of the admissions tests. They have hard deadlines. You must be responsible for registering that yourself. It is not your school. You have to register that and pay for that yourself. You've got to have a deadline to register and a deadline to do the test. You can register from May. You can book from June. This year was 23rd of June. And the deadline to book is 16th of September. And the testing window is mid-July to mid-September. I'd be intrigued. When did you guys do the test? Did you do it in sort of August, or did you do it while you were at school in September?
I did mine in August because I didn't really want to do it with everything going on at Upper Six. So I thought of just getting the UCAT out of the way before we started school.
Okay, Brina was the same?
Yeah, so I did mine a week before we came back for year 13, I think specifically on the 20th of August.
Okay, great. So the end of August. So the idea that you should try eke out an extra week or two's worth of revision is not really worth it, because it's easier to do it when your mind is nice and clear.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
on that, it's important to note that when you're back in school, you're focusing on personal statements and writing that and looking at that with your teachers. So actually, that's important to just spend your time doing that and not distracted. And also, it's important to say that in that summer period as well, you might not want to pack in too many shadowing experiences, because actually you do need to spend some time preparing for the UCAT during that time as well. So it's good to have a few, but maybe don't pack out your whole summer with shadowing.
Yeah, so we'll kind of come on to this, but I mean, it's got four sections. So verbal reasoning, decision making, the quantitative reasoning, and situational judgment. And I guess so, Stephanie, in your experience, do people prepare differently for the four papers as well?
I wouldn't necessarily say people prepare differently for the four different sections. I guess they're preparing for the test as a whole, because I think part of the challenge of that test is really the mental endurance of the concentration that you need to go through for just pure focus for 2 hours. So I think people generally tend to try and understand the question types and what they will face in the UCAT exam. And then really they tend to prepare by doing lots of mock assessments and trying out in that way. So maybe there are specific things that they can do to prepare for different sections. So, for example, with the verbal reasoning, lots of people might try a sort of speed reading app to try and improve their speed reading, because part of the issue is some of the time management that happens there. With the quantitative reasoning, they might prepare by doing some mental maths and working on estimating things. Situational judgment is a bit more tricky because they maybe need to read some information about good judgments within medicine and within dentistry as well. So I think you can prepare individually for the sections initially, but when you get closer to the test, I think you would start to then prepare as a whole instead.
So very similar to all of these admissions tests, that they're very long, mentally exhausting. So by the end, you need to be doing full tests. Yeah. So I noticed, Prima, you were nodding at the verbal reasoning. Is that something you did? You did some speed reading activities?
Yeah, I think especially when I started with VR, you tend to realize that verbal reasoning's the hardest section to familiarize yourself with and the hardest to improve at. So at the beginning, I really struggled with getting through the whole passage and like trying to find keywords to answer the questions. So I did end up using, so Medify has a inference reader, and I did end up using those to try and practice my speed reading skills before tackling the VR questions.
Okay, that's interesting that you found that one the most difficult. Brandon, was that your experience as well?
Actually, no, quite the contrary. BL verbal reasoning was one of my better sections. I think it was because I was quite familiar with processing large amount of like information, because I read quite a bit outside of like school. So for me, I found verbal reasoning not too foreign, but I still had to go out my way to find a lot of different new strategies to tackle with, because I've never experienced having the time pressure of having to be able to understand like a whole page of text in like 30 seconds. So I think like what Prina said, there's a lot of ways different people went about trying to prepare for each individual section. So I think what really worked well for me was that I referred to a lot of like YouTube videos and a lot of online guides where people who had sat the exam before offered like small tips and tricks on how they could shave off a few seconds, a few minutes on how to make answering more efficient. So I think yeah, that really worked well for me.
Okay. And so, Stephanie, have you found that's the case for some students? It's very mixed as to which of the four papers they find the most difficult.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's part of why the people who organise the UCAT say it's not really trainable, because actually a lot of the skills which you're using really depend on your educational background. For example, Brandon, who reads a lot of information, will find the verbal reasoning a lot easier because he's an avid reader than somebody who maybe is not so keen on reading, only reads when they're doing their schoolwork, for example, and actually that's much more difficult for them. Whereas there are other people who are really whizzes in mathematics, and actually they would find that section incredibly easy.
And so, for both of you, do you have any tips for the decision-making section? So, Prina?
So I think with decision-making, it's the section that has the most types of questions. They have syllogisms, they have logic puzzles. There's different ways to tackle all of these questions, but I think the best way to do it for me personally was looking at the topical questions and the mini mocks on Medify, trying to grind out each section for the DM, and trying to max out your score for each question type can help to improve your overall skill score for DM. You generally notice that there's a pattern when it comes to this, especially the syllogisms and the data syllogisms. You learn how to extract information from the text to answer those quickly, and learning how to master the use of like partial marks and full marks to try and max out your score is also something that you get used to when you practice the mini mocks.
Okay, interesting. So lots of repeated questions, and then you find that your strategies and how you max marks. So Brandon, similar similar thing that you did there?
Yeah, quite similar, but I would like to add on something that the thing for DM that I know there's like how many questions are there? I don't remember, but there's like a set number of questions in DM
35.
and 35, and then there's like a set number of questions allocated for each question type. And each question is 1, maybe 2 marks, regardless of the difficulty. So I think what really helped me in DM was learning how to prioritize what questions to answer first. Because some questions you're able to answer faster, more easily, and get those marks earlier on in the exam. For instance, I think for most of the people, they will agree that logic puzzles, which the second question type in DM, will definitely be the hardest and most time consuming one. And at the end of the day, the question only awards 1 mark. So what I found to be extremely helpful for not only me but for others was that we skipped doing logical puzzles at first. Let's say when we started doing the section, maybe we did the syllogisms, then we skipped logic puzzles and moved on to Venn diagrams, recognizing assumptions, and so on. And when we do have a bit of time at the end, we only went back to logical puzzles because those were the marks that we were most likely unable to get and required a lot of time to get it right. So instead of spending a lot of time getting that 1 mark, why not spend the same amount of time getting like 5-6 marks on other sections? So I think that was one strategy that I particularly quite promote for people doing DM especially, because at the end of the day, UCAT is not about getting full marks, it's about getting the most marks at the fixed amount of time you are allocated with.
Yeah, okay. And of course, you understood that because you'd done so many past papers and you knew which were your strengths. Prina.
Yeah, so if I can add something, for DM especially, and the logic puzzles and the syllogisms, something that really helps is that they give you erasable whiteboard, drawing out like the situation, especially for logic puzzles, drawing out a table and like marking down all the information is really helpful. Especially for DM, a visual representation helps you understand the question better, and maybe you'll get your answer faster, because generally you want to spend about 40 seconds per question on DM, and drawing it out will make you understand the question faster and maybe even answer within that time.
Okay, so what suits you, which particular strategy? So Stephanie, I know you prepare your students really early for this exam. So the quantitative reasoning one, is there anything you particularly do or any resources you recommend for students to start preparing for that?
So in terms of quantitative reasoning, in terms of resources that we use for that, I would suggest that most of the students who are sitting for the UCAT have a really high level of maths anyway. It's really a case of it's not really that the maths is that difficult. It's just maybe understanding the different types of questions that you will face. So, for example, there may be a small number of questions on how to calculate tax. And if you've never calculated tax before, maybe you won't really understand how it works. So just trying to understand how each question will work is really all that's required of the quantitative reasoning section, because many of the students really already have quite a high level of maths. But what I would say is I would agree with Brandon, and I would take this sentiment forward into the quantitative reasoning and all of the UCAT really, when he mentioned the fact that you have to be okay with some of your answers maybe not being quite right. Exactly the same with the quantitative reasoning. It's really not the maths that's difficult. It's actually the time that you have to be able to calculate that maths. So actually sometimes using an estimate of roughly what the answer would be and choosing the closest answer is actually maybe a better strategy than fully working it out with every decimal place that might be there as well. I think part of the reason why the UCAT works is because as a doctor, I think you have to be okay with certain levels of uncertainty. And actually, I think in this particular test as well, you have to be okay that perhaps you're not going to get everything right and not have those perfectionist tendencies. I think sometimes is the key to scoring quite highly.
Because it's a speed thing.
Yes.
You've got to be quick. Yeah. So certainly is that something, Prina, Brandon, you also found?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the one that I always think must be actually quite difficult for Malaysian students is the situational judgment one. So Stephanie, obviously you're from the UK, you were in the NHS system, you understand it really well, but it is quite alien. And obviously these are scenarios that are difficult to sort of teach in that sense. So you're kind of going with your gut. How do you help students do well on the situational judgment paper?
Yeah, I think it is a really tricky one. And I think situational judgment is definitely hard when you're not living within that healthcare system as well. So the Malaysian healthcare system is slightly different. The wider healthcare team have a very different role as well. So it's sort of about talking about those different roles, talking about different scenarios and different situations that students might face, and actually discussing our own judgments and our own feelings about things, and actually then comparing that with some of the answers that might be on the mock tests and in the question banks that you see. So I think it is very, very tricky. One thing that my students have done in the past and was really successful for them is there's a document called Good Medical Practice, which is released by the General Medical Council. It is a huge PDF because it's designed for doctors and junior doctors to be able to make their own decisions about different scenarios within healthcare, but at least it gives you a gauge of how you might choose to make those decisions. And I think it's really important for that section as well to be able to put yourself in the correct role that you're assigned in the question. For example, so it tells you that you are a junior doctor in this particular situation. So you have to behave and make a decision based on the fact that you're a junior doctor, that you might have limited knowledge, that you might not be the top of the pecking order in terms of who gets to make the decision. So then it's about responding appropriately based on your role as well. And I think that's really the difficult part, because actually many of the responses make sense if you're in different types of roles. So actually that's why it's so difficult, because it's so nuanced. And I think that's why UCAT also allocate the partial marks for that. So because it is so difficult to consistently land on exactly the right answer.
So for both of you, Prima and Brandon, you're in the same school. So
Yep.
did you really value the opportunity to discuss some of these situational judgment questions together? Did you get some really good debates going on?
I think for situational judgment, right? Sometimes we do encounter areas where some people were quite confused on why a certain particular line of action was more justified than another, because maybe our moral compasses are aligned differently. But I think what really helped a lot of people understand like how to answer SJT was about like hammering down on the few core values that the exam, the UCAT exam, or the general the UK NHS people, they're trying to test out of you. So generally, I felt like regardless of moral compass, I feel like if we all could agree on like the few core principles such as like patient safety, delivering effective treatment, and uh maintaining like good working relationships. So these were quite a few anchor points that help keep a lot of us like centered around SJT. So even though sometimes our moral compass sway, sometimes like we might say, oh, we were thinking that maybe action A was more beneficial. But at the end of the day, if you consider the whole thing and with all the core principles in mind, it was quite easy to come to agreement that yeah, at the end of the day, we're dealing with patient safety here. So I think because this action prioritized patient safety, this was good, even though it might not fully agree with our moral compass or whatsoever.
Yeah, that's interesting. So your moral compass coming in, the document that Miss Stephanie was talking about, and also discussing it with the others and closely reading what is the situation for that specific question. So Prina, did you find it helpful to discuss those kind of questions with other people?
Yeah, I think towards the end of our year 12, we did a lot of presentations discussing ethics and different situations and scenarios. And generally, you notice a trend in the situational judgment of the UCAT where they ask similar questions. It'll be like a student shows up late because they have some other commitment outside, and how would you respond to this? And a lot of situational judgment is basing off your gut feeling, but discussing our unique points of views helps us to see which of our perspectives aligns most with, as Miss Stephanie mentioned, the good medical practice document. And practicing a lot of these, especially on the UCAT website's official question bank, tells you how a doctor should think and behave in the NHS. And doing a lot of these questions does help us get more familiarized with these situations. And generally, when you do a lot of them, you do tend to see an upward trend in your situational judgment score.
Okay, that's good. So the basic there is the more you do, the higher your score gets. So it is a practice thing. Yeah, well, that's what the podcast is for, to get everybody started off. So Stephanie, I know you've got a program that you lay out for them as to prep for the UCAT and also the interviews. How does it work out timing sort of from year 12?
So what we would normally do when we're preparing the students to think about the UCAT is really their first session where they join the MABECS club at the start of year 12. We'll have an overview of generally the application process. And obviously we'll touch upon what UCAT is then, but that will only be a few minutes to discuss that. Then later on in term 1, so somewhere between August and December, we'll then discuss further about an introduction to the UCAT. So we'll just have a very brief introduction to all of the question types. And then some students might choose to go away and do a little bit of exploring themselves, have a look at some example questions, that type of thing, just little and often. After that, when we get back in January, usually we then put together a program of between 6 and 8 weeks where we can explore each question type in a lot more detail. So the senior students will teach the junior students, and actually they'll pass on a lot of their wisdom and information that they have gained from really, really intensely preparing for this test and the things that they've learned along the way. I think that's generally the best thing that they could do, because the former students that have just taken the UCAT, it's fresh in their mind. They've done so much preparation. Somebody like me trying to train the students is never going to be as effective, because actually I'm not doing that same intense preparation that the senior students are. So they're really great at teaching each other, guiding each other through it for that time period. And then afterwards, they'll have their AS level exams. When they finish their exams, then we would recommend them to maybe subscribe to a platform like Medify or MedEntry, which is a subscription platform which has a huge question bank of questions. And then they would do their own individual, really intense preparation in the build-up to their exam then at that point.
Okay, so lots of group work, but then in the summer, it's just together. So, Brandon and Prina, you had the advantage of having peers around you and having seniors who were able to advise you. How helpful was that, having seniors to talk to?
Okay. I think it was extremely helpful. Like, I had a senior. He was, because like we were in a boarding school, right? So a senior in a boarding school is basically someone who you can turn to anytime you want and whenever you need help. So I found having senior support extremely important in medicine, because for one, the journey of preparing for medical applications is very, very intense. So having someone who has gone through the path and seeing how they have like survived the journey keeps me motivated, like knowing that it's possible. And during UCAT especially, I felt like having someone who was experienced in practicing in like in meeting and overcoming the same challenges I faced was quite good, because I was able to ask them for more specific tips, and they're able to, like as Miss Stephanie said, use their wisdom and experience to give me solutions that were like more tailored to whichever like problem. For instance, the one I talked about for DM, the skipping logical reasoning, that that was one of the wisdoms that was passed down to me by the senior. And because of that, it saved me a lot of time, because I didn't have to go through trial and error to figure that out myself. So I think that was mainly it. Prina, do you have anything to share?
Yeah.
So for me, seniors mainly came into play for like emotional support. The UCAT is very intense, and also emotionally draining, and very easily it can lead to burnout. And I think turning to my seniors at that point who have done this and gone through the same experiences that I have helped me realize that it's very important to take breaks when you do the UCAT and to structure your training properly so that you don't end up burning out and being inconsistent with your practice. And I think just having someone to talk to share that struggle with is something that's very important so that you don't feel like you're alone when it comes to preparing for the UCAT.
Yeah, that's something that I've heard a lot in actually all of the admissions test podcasts. This idea of you do need moral support from other people, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they're doing the UCAT as well. You might be in a small school where you're the only person doing UCAT, but that moral support can come from people that did one of the other admissions tests because they're all challenging. So, do you know whether there's kind of like an online community of Malaysian students to help juniors? I'm thinking of those students that are in small schools who don't have seniors that they can actually knock on their door and ask. Is there a community like that online?
I think there is something similar. So I would like to bring up that there's an official organization for Malaysian medics called MMI UK, but that one currently is more reserved for interview preparation. But for UCAT help, for all that, I think a lot of students could turn to sources like Reddit or Discord, and there are a lot of like online forums out there for people who can just like drop in a message, pop in, see what people are discussing about, especially because during UCAT season, the specific trade for UCAT will be extremely busy, filled with like-minded people all in the same boat trying to frantically prepare for UCAT. And seeing so many people trying to like prepare for it, and then they'll also share each other, like they'll share their tips with each other. And then you also have like people who have done the UCAT also lurking around in the chat who are always like happy to give advice. So I think there was a time where I actually asked instance for like verbal reasoning. I asked about like how do you answer this question or something along those lines, and people were quite quick to respond. So I felt like for those people who don't really have a direct senior to contact, having like those online platforms where there's a lot of people using it, like Reddit, would be quite a good alternative because equally it's just about people giving you the emotional support and helping you whenever you need help, right? So I think that was also quite good for me.
What was the name of that Malaysian organization again?
MMI UK.
MMI
UK.
MMI UK. Okay, great. And I suppose you have to be disciplined not to go down the rabbit hole of being on Reddit and going through question after question, right? You just need to go in and also, I guess, trust that what they're telling you is accurate. That's one of the problems, right? That you just need to make sure that you're getting information from accurate sources. So for both of you, can I ask, when did you start full-timed papers? So we were talking earlier that you do all four of them together. It's 2 hours. You get a couple of minutes between each paper. Not enough. Nothing. You can't drink anything. Not enough time to go to the toilet. So it's pretty intense. When did you start doing the full 2 hours ones? Brina?
Yeah, so I actually, when I started my UCAT prep, I immediately started doing full-time papers. I think it's very important to have that exposure to how intense the timings and how intense the environment actually is. So even though I was doing these topicals and these mini mocks, at the same time, I was also trying to get in one full mock a day, because I think it's important to touch on each section at least once per day to keep yourself familiarized and keep working on your strategies too.
Okay, interesting. So are you saying that from sort of September in your lower six, in your year 12, you were doing one full mock a day, which is about 2 hours?
No, so when I started my UCAT prep like properly, this is after year 12, like 1 week after we had something called OBM, and 1 week after that, immediately when we started UCAT prep, I started doing full mock straight away. So that's around 1.5 months of full mocks and intense UCAT prep before the UCAT.
Okay, so that was in August. No, when did we finish out with BAM school? June.
End of June.
Yeah.
End of June. So from the end of June till you did the exam, you were doing at least one full-timed mock paper a day.
I tried to, between the being burnt out and between the inconsistent practice, I tried to fit. Generally, I did mainly fit one mock per day. There were some days that I did leave out, but
Yeah, I mean, as you say, burnout is a problem, right? So Brandon, when did you start doing the full-timed papers?
For me, it was quite different than what Prina did. For me, I think Prina also experienced this, but we started actually doing full mocks, like exposure to full mocks really, really early on. Like Miss Stephanie said, we started doing UCAT introductions in term 2. So that was most of our first experience doing a first full mock. And because the amount of full mocks that the UCAT website provides you, the one that you mentioned earlier in the video, they provide you with 4 full mocks to practice with. And those 4 mocks are the closest, most accurate thing you can get to an actual UCAT exam before the UCAT exam. So those 4 mocks are extremely precious. So I thought that because we already did 2 during our individual practice sessions in school, I only had 2 more to practice with towards the end. So I just thought of saving them until right before the exam. And because of that, I started doing full mocks a bit later on, maybe around, I started, I think, during late July to August. But before that, I was actually honing individual papers, like maybe spending a day doing VR and then addressing the subsections in VR, making sure I can iron all the weak points out. And then once I'm satisfied that, move on to decision making, repeat QR, repeat SJT until I was comfortable with each session. Then only I started doing full mocks because I felt like if I couldn't really understand or nail down each session individually first, going into a full mock might be a waste of the mock paper because the mock paper was a very close thing of the mock paper was a practical simulation of what the exam would be like. So I felt like if I could bring like the same mentality, the same preparedness into each mock, then during the exam day itself, I would probably be well prepared enough. But yeah, that's all I have to say.
Okay, so there is something to say that the most recent papers you do just before the exam. So you didn't use something like Medify?
I did use Medify. Medify has like 48 mocks, but at the end of the day, Medify mocks, even though there might be full UCAT mocks, their accuracy is not they don't really reflect the UCAT as well as the UCAT one does, especially in SJT, because the way that they grade, the way that they mark this judgment, the entire situational judgment area, is not exactly 100% reflective of how the actual exam will mark it. So for that, I really turn to the official mocks and topicals on the website.
Okay, yeah. So Stephanie, they were saying that you made them do this mock quite early on. I know I also made the lawyers do a mock quite early on as well. How important is that in terms of conveying the information about how difficult this is and how challenging this is? Is it useful to do one early on?
Yeah, I think it's really useful for the students to get a rough idea about if they sat it cold without really very much training, where would they be scoring? So what is their natural and innate ability to score on the test? And then after we do the sort of 6 to 8 weeks of introducing to the question types, we might do a further mock with them again to see what has been the improvement in that time. So when they've been more exposed to the questions. And then that's almost forms their baseline. They know really what they're aiming for, because if they have looked at their chosen university websites and had a look through the admissions data, you can often find what the UCAT cutoffs are for international students, that type of thing. So students should have a rough idea of what they're aiming for. Ultimately, all students, if they want to be competitive with most of our applications, they should really be aiming for the 90th percentile. So they really have a rough idea of where they're aiming for. So it gives them a really strong baseline, and it shows them really how much work they might need to do as well. So it can be quite motivating in terms of making sure that their head is really in the game when they finish their AS level as well.
Yeah. So you hit the ground running as well. You've done some of the groundwork, so you can just launch straight off into those full tests. Okay, so both of you, you've gone through this big exam. You've both done it. You've both done it well. So well done, very good. Is there anything that you wish you'd known when you started this whole process? Anything you would have done differently?
I think as much prep as you do for the UCAT, something that I wish I'd known is how important the actual day of the test is. A lot of us had a common experience of being too stressed a few hours before our paper, which really impacted our scores, I think. But so I wish I'd known earlier to like take a breath, calm down, not do any more UCAT prep on the day itself. Maybe like eat a banana or something and go into the UCAT.
Good food. And yeah, so this is something I've heard on other admissions test podcasts. Be really careful about what you eat. It has to be high energy food that's going to last you for the exam, and nothing that's going to upset your tummy or upset you. Yeah, good advice, Brandon. Anything you would do differently?
Very similar to Prina. I think our year was extremely like I won't say like hilarious because it's not a good thing, but it was quite shocking to me that how much your mental psyche on that day could affect your overall performance. Like I know so many people in our year, so many people not outside of our year who were so well prepared for UCAT. Like I remember like checking up on like a few of them, like, oh, I'm scoring high 90s, I'm scoring high 80s. And then on that day I think it's because of like the nerves of doing this class that practically decides your future for you. It really like causes some of us, especially me. I remember waking up that morning feeling like uh it's over. Like I felt like today's the day. Everything hinges on today. And I felt like that mentality really didn't put me in a great state of mind going to the test because I was extremely jittery and I couldn't really think well. I remember for my VR, I was completed. And then normally I would just click next, complete. But then I don't know why on that day, I think because of my nerves, I actually clicked back and then I was like looking through my questions and then I accidentally misclicked an answer that I did not choose. So that question automatically became wrong. So -1. So and then that really like, oh wow. That really like caused me to feel a bit more panicky and overall the experience wasn't as smoothly as eh, the experience didn't go as smoothly as I thought it would because I think what Prina said, like not being the right state of mind, not eating like I tried eating well, but I really couldn't eat well. And then like trying to be the best version of yourself, trying to be prime state, on the day. That's very, very important. And I think that everyone doing the test, there's a point where there's a point where practice only takes you up so far. Like practice plateaus eventually. And what's remaining that you need is luck and confidence. So I think on test day itself, try to um calm yourself down, try to be in the best state of mind that you can, and know that your practice is all probably worth it and you have done enough already. Don't need to like push a bit more, maybe don't need to do one more mock right before the test for the sake of like feeling more prepared. If it helps you prepare better, if it helps you feel calm, do it. But if not, try your best to just be calm, be steady.
Yeah, and just be kind to yourself as well. Actually, when you're doing it, it's been common advice that on the morning of the test, don't revise on the morning of the test. Nothing else is going to actually sort of be going in. And because you've got 4 papers, and we were just saying there's 1 or 2 minutes between each one, there is a chance to just kind of, if you did do a mistake by clicking the wrong button, take a deep breath and just kind of have a reset. And try to approach this. And so, Stephanie, you've had a lot of experience with medics who've done this exam. Some have got great results, some of them have got results lower than they wanted. Please convince us all it is not the end of the world, right?
No, it's definitely not the end of the world. I think the reality is that the UCAT test is important for UK admissions. However, there are lots and lots of universities out there who place a much lower importance on the UCAT score itself. They might place a much higher importance on your GCSE grades, for example, or they might place a higher importance on your predicted A-level grades. So each university has their own formula, as it were, in terms of how to decide who to invite to interview. So there are some universities where strategically you can look, actually, what are my chances of getting into this university? So if you have a lower UCAT score, for example, you probably wouldn't choose to apply to somewhere like Bristol that has an incredibly high UCAT cutoff score, and it almost 100% bases its decision on who to interview based on the UCAT. You choose differently. You have to be strategic about your application. Otherwise, it becomes pretty much a wasted application, really. So it's not the end of the world. And also, there are many other wonderful universities that you can apply to throughout the world as well. I think in Malaysia, you're much more open to exploring different countries that are outside of the fixed just UK university system. So I think there are many, many universities that don't rely on admissions tests. For example, Ireland, with some really amazing universities over there with lots of heritage that don't need any admissions tests from you. So actually, if it doesn't go your way, it's just time to rethink and redirect, I would say.
Yeah, and there are lots of other options. And actually, I think, I've learned a lot from you that MABECS applications, more than any other subject, are very, very strategic. And I was in a webinar the other day with Dundee. And again, the importance of the UCAT is a lot lower for Dundee. So being strategic, doing your research, because you get the results when you come out, right? Did you waited for your results and you came out with them, right, Prina?
Yeah, they escort you out of the computer room and print out your results immediately and hand it to you. So it's quite nerve-wracking.
Yes. Well, in a way, better than having to wait 2 months or something, maybe. But then it means that you've got that key data point to go and talk to someone like Miss Stephanie and make strategic applications. So yes, UCAT important, but it's not the be all and end all. And if you don't do well in it, there are plenty of other options out there. Yeah, Brandon?
Yeah, I want to add something upon like what you're talking about, like UCAT is not the be all and all. I know people who got 99% UCAT or 98 percentile and they got zero offers. So I think that if you are a good applicant, if you're a strong applicant, the UCAT is not the only indicator that you are like you're like a strong applicant in medicine. There's a lot of areas that different unis focus on. For instance, like some people might be stronger in interview, some people might be stronger in just like being a more empathetic person in general. And I think those qualities are also very important for being applicant in medical school, because some unis they really look forward towards that. So like I feel like even though your UCAT might not be as good as you might want it to be, I feel like what's good to know for a lot of people is that it's not the end of your journey, because there's definitely places that value what you have and what you currently have, that look beyond just a few numbers on a piece of paper, right? And even if your UCAT is low, there's still a good chance that you're able to still enter university. It may not be your original plan, but I feel like rejection and redirection is like a very core canon event in medicine, where people's journey keeps changing. Like initially, I aimed for King's, I got King's, but I think halfway through I decided that maybe London was not for me, and I felt that going to some place like Nottingham would suit me better. So I felt like this process of like changing your mind and and being open towards like adapting towards your circumstances is not only important for the journey, but important for your growth as a doctor, because your journey is more than just like a straight line, right? Some people might face ups and downs, and it's important to learn from these setbacks.
True. Yeah. I agree. Okay, so Prina, any final tips to your juniors who are following you in this exam?
I think just generally try your best. As both Miss Steph and Brandon said, the UCAT doesn't determine your future. If you really do want to be a doctor, you'll get there somehow, whether it's through the UK, maybe through other pathways. There's so many different ways to get into medicine. You could do a foundation, or you could do post-grad medicine. The UCAT is not the final determinant of what your future is. So just try your best. And if it doesn't go your way, if you really want it, you will find a way to get there.
Okay. Yeah, good. I agree. Brandon?
Nothing Prina hasn't said, but I think I want to wish like everyone who's taking UCAT this season, best of luck. And then whatever the outcome, know that like you have done something a lot of people won't do in their life, and you've survived this journey. And I think that it's doing this, completing this is an achievement on its own. And you shouldn't like play down what you get and play down your experiences, because I think that's always something valuable to learn from everything. And yeah, hope for the best, but you'll see once you get your score, I suppose.
Yeah, true. Life skills, whatever the result. Yeah. Miss Stephanie, any final tips?
I guess just from me, I have to really truly agree with the sentiments that Brandon and Prina have already mentioned. I think if you want to prepare to set yourself up in the best possible way, don't overstuff your summer with placements. Give yourself time to actually prepare for the test. Make sure that you are feeling confident when you go into that room, because I guess as we've seen today, part of your ability to perform on that day is actually your mental state, how you're feeling walking into that exam room. So doing whatever you can to keep yourself as calm as possible. And that might be preparing early, doing little and often, that type of thing. But just trying to plan for your success as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think plan is the key word there. It's all about the quality of your work, not your quantity. Prina talked about the burnout that you can get from that. There are many, many things you have to do as a student. So really plan it so that you're able to get some quality in there. Yeah. Thank you so much, Prima, Brandon, Miss Stephanie. Thank you very much for sharing all of your tips and advice, and good luck with your university applications and your A2 exams, which are just about to start.
Thank you, Miss.
Okay. You're welcome. Good luck. Good luck. Bye. Thanks, Miss
Bye.
Stephanie.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much.
Bye. Bye.